Hello, colleagues and friends at International Relaxation Day Conference 2025. It's my great pleasure to present at the conference this year. I'm Dr. Qing Wang from School of Psychology and Cognitive Science at East China Normal University. My research interests include coaching psychology, learning, and creativity. I want to share some of my ideas of creative coping with you in this presentation, titled Coping Creatively and Using Creativity to Cope. How creativity can be applied in meditation and stress management. I'm going to share my screen with you. Here we go. So in the following sessions, I will talk about basics of coping with stress, the definition and related research of creative coping, some methods of coping creatively, and using creativity to cope with some examples. And lastly, recommendations of daily creative coping practices that will be helpful in meditation and stress management. As humans, we all have stress, and we all learn how to cope with stress or manage stress. Most of the time, people use common or habitual ways to cope with stress. For instance, planning, wishful thinking, support seeking, postponing, and so on. And we know that not every method is effective. Some of them are even harmful for us in the long run. Psychologists usually categorize coping methods into positive and negative coping. Positive methods include task-focused coping, acceptance, positive reframing, reappraisal strategies, using humor, planning, active coping, acceptance of emotions, and so on. Typical negative methods include avoidance coping, and some people seek emotion or social-focused coping strategies. They can be effective in the short run, but we're not quite sure whether they are working in the long run. I would like to introduce the idea of creative coping. It is use of creativity as a positive coping strategy when people facing stress. It means that people actively think about new approaches to coping and deliberately try something never used before, like you're using your creativity muscle. When people exercise their creativity in coping, they may expand their cognitive repertoire, discover more personal resources, and come up with novel and effective ways to deal with demanding situations. So, why creative coping works? Here are some theoretical and empirical foundations. Based on theory of transformative coping, creativity can reduce negative emotions and transform negative emotions into positive ones and more effective long-term coping, with the transformative quality and its association with spirituality. Also, creativity is related to adaptive coping, which means that creativity can influence how one adapts to experience and how one acquires coping skills for different stresses. There are some empirical studies show that people who reported more creative activities than usual felt higher activated positive effects and flourishing in the daily diary study. And highly creative people would use significantly more active strategies in coping with frustrating situations. In student populations, my research team found that creative coping positively predicted positive achievement emotions and negatively predicted negative achievement emotions through the mediation of psychological capital, including 4 aspects: self-efficacy, resilience, optimism, and hope. We also found that students who used more creative methods in coping experienced higher well-being and less stress at school. Creative coping methods consist of 2 approaches: using creativity as a coping strategy and being creative in coping. We may be quite familiar with the idea of creative arts or expressive arts. These are using creativity as strategies, and obviously we also need to be creative in expressing ourselves in several different ways, often without using words, such as through painting, drawing, photography, dance, music, or drama. Creative arts can help us to explore feelings non-verbally, enhance our self-awareness, and reduce stress. They are especially useful for people who lack the ability to articulate their inner world with words alone. They need certain forms of art and expression. In creative arts, people engage in multimodal creative expression and use movement, sound, colors, images, storytelling, and even silence through contemplative and self-regulatory practices for stress management. These practices are designed based on 4 principles: imagination, expression, active participation, and mind-body connection. Examples of using creativity to cope include mindful painting or drawing, and self-portrait by truly observing and appreciating yourself, mandala making or creative coloring, filling blanks of figures using different combinations of colors, creative writing. You can write poetry, novels, or journals, or simply write down anything that flows in your mind without self-criticism and over self-reflection. Sculpting or handcrafting, feeling that your mind, hands, and artifacts are integrated into one. Be really focused and mindful. Next one is role-playing or drama. You can write your own scripts and play yourself, or you can find your favorite movie scenes and try to play in a different way from actors did in the scenes. Photography or filmmaking is more about paying attention to something or someone that you usually do not notice, being mindful to their existence, and connect with them in a new, creative way. Last but not least, you can use your body creatively, engage in mindful dancing or any movement with guidance and music. The list of creative coping is unexhaustive. Basically, you can try anything that is creative and effective for you. Regarding coping creatively, I would like to share with you one of my favorite examples. This comes from my coaching session with a lady who has experienced chronic stress. Her stresses seems to be overwhelming, and they relate to many people, like long distance from work, relationships with boss and colleagues, many deadlines of many projects, too much family duty, domestic work, and she has 2 teenage children, and an invisible spouse who is basically living in his office. Her usual coping methods include sleeping, eating, drinking, playing smartphone, internet browsing, and calling friends to complain. And I asked her whether these methods were useful. She said that initially they're fine, but gradually they cause some problems, such as insomnia because the sleep pattern is regular. Mindless eating and drinking cause health problems. Smartphone use cause constant distraction, and friends are not willing to be her emotional garbage bins anymore. So what can be done differently? We found that social focused coping is especially important for her, and we want to make this method more creatively. So our creative coping method can be a creative stand-up comedy. How are we going to do that? First, write your own scripts, using workplace or family stresses as writing materials. Through writing, you may take a new perspective of the stresses. It is like cognitive reappraisal, which is an evidently useful coping strategy. Next, use humor and polish the punchlines to make the events and episodes more vivid and interesting. Connect your feelings, language, and your body movements when you practice comedy. You don't have to invite real audience. You can just present the comedy to imaginary audience or in front of a mirror. If you do want a real audience, you can invite friends over for a stand-up comedy night and enjoy the laugh and have fun. There are some recommendations of creative coping practices that you can try daily. Write self-compassion journals with coloring, drawing, or photos. Write down list instead of to-do list every day. You can consider to-do list as a reminder, not rigid goals that you must achieve. This will help you to release some stress. Use a creative way to do one routine activity. For example, you can change a way to go to work. If you meditate daily, change one small thing in meditation and experience differences. You can change your spot to meditate, change a cushion, change a position, or change an object of your attention. Find a creative way of digital detox for 1 hour every day. Be mindful of your impulsion of grabbing the phone whenever you feel bored or stressed, and pause. If you really need to use the phone, use it mindfully. Pay real attention to what information you are taking in, whom you are writing to, and how you feel at that moment. Finally, do a little observation experiment. What others usually do when they face certain stressful situations. You can deliberately choose a different and appropriate response and observe yourself. How do I feel then? At the end of my short presentation, I want to emphasize a few messages, and I hope they are helpful for you. First, coping creatively invites us to use different, unusual, and effective methods to cope with stress. Second, research found that just being creative is beneficial for us by enhancing our psychological capital and reduce stress. Third, we can add some creative elements to the effective coping methods that we usually do. If you meditate and you found meditation is beneficial for you, you can change a way of breathing in meditation. Fourth, we can use many different creative and expressive arts for stress relief. It is even better to create your own methods. Lastly, we need to know that creative coping will not let our stresses vanish completely, but it may change the way that we see stressors and become more self-sufficient and self-compassionate in coping with them. That's all about my sharing today. I wish you a great journey towards relaxation, peace, and wisdom.